We're going through this 3-part hip mobility series with 5 reps per movement. Go ahead and feel free to join me for this sequence. Start with the quadruped with the yoga block nearby. Tuck into cat back position and then drive into cow. A couple reps just to find cat securely. Once you feel like you've got it, go ahead and stay in a cat back and kick into hip extension. So kick one leg up. Slide that yoga block to the right height so that you have an inch or so between your highest hip extension through the knee to the block. Doing so without arching the back or rotating the hip toward that floating leg side. So nice and firm, glute should be firing, tail should be working on tucking into hip extend or to cat position. And then we're just gonna kick up off the block 5 times, tap the knee down, drive up. This is a great way to practice just feeling the glute. If your low back is feeling the contraction, you might have the block set too high, or you might have lost that slight posterior pelvic tilt. Next up are hip capsule cars. So we're floating the knee over that block, and then windshield wipering our heel inward toward the midline and then back out away from the body for 5 reps as well. Do your best not to rotate through the hips. Keep the knee hovering over the same point and still continue to keep that tail tucked, low back expanding. Drive strong through the arms so the elbows are both fixed. Notice that I've got my floating leg hand turned out and I'm pushing through the floor with all points in my foot or my hand. Okay, finally we've got a kick up and then drag the knee forward like you're gonna do a hip car in quadruped. So start with your knee on the block, kick up to the ceiling, just like we practiced earlier, and then drag that knee forward, letting the ankle come in line until the shin is parallel to the floor. And this is really important here. Keep those hip headlights or your belt buckle pointing to the floor and that tail tucked under. And when you drag your knee around the bend, you should feel no compression in that side body. So no side bending to get that knee closer to the wrist. It just goes as far as it goes with just movement through the hip. We're doing 5 of these, just like the other movements. I think I've got 1 or 2 more here. If you lost count, keep resetting every time you set up, get that knee back on the block. Check that your tail's tucked, check that your hip headlights are shining to the floor. Check that the elbows are still locked out. All right, take a moment to stretch. This is one way you could stretch in between your rounds. Little hip crossover and rotate toward that hip you just worked. And then if you want to roll the same side wrist at the same time, you could do some wrist cars or just shake it out, roll it, do whatever feels nice. And we're gonna move on to the second side. I'm gonna block against the wall here. You can use furniture or some other kind of sturdy surface if you like, or you can stay in the middle of the room as long as you didn't struggle with the hip rotation and flexion, lateral flexion in that last sequence. All right, second side, same setup. We're in quadruped. I've got my kneeling hip jammed into the wall. So I'm pushing into the wall here. I'm getting as much stability as I can. Notice I'm turning my hands out and separating the heels of my hands a bit. So I have a little more side to side stability. And then kick back with a cat back position. Figure out what setup works best for your yoga block. You've got 3 heights on that. You also have other things you can throw under that knee. This is just to check so that as we do these drills, the knee doesn't sink lower and lower and lower as we go along. All right, 5 kicks off the block. So you're just pushing the sole of the foot toward the sky, and lifting the knee off the block, and just driving into hip extension without extending the spine. Got 2 more here. So this is a core exercise as well, if you haven't noticed. Keeping the front line nice and active, keeping the ribs on the body here. Okay, next I'm gonna get down into my elbows just so you can see what's going on here. Remember, we're doing those windshield wipers, so the knees stay off the block, and then you're swiveling the heel externally and then internally through rotation. So just like we do in standing with the knee flexed, or on our back with the knee flexed, but we're in a new position here. That knee stays right over the center of the block the whole time. So if you need to peek down there and make sure it doesn't float away, do that so you can keep the exercise very accurate and clean. And I'm just about ready for the third and final exercise here. Here we go. So you're starting with the knee resting on the block. Drive strong through the elbows, keeping them straight. Push the shoulder blades apart. Kick up. Drag that knee forward just as far enough so the ankle falls in line. If you're looking head on at yourself, you should not be able to see that shin at all, that lower leg at all. Kick back up and then tap. So you've got checkpoints. Kick, drag forward. Next checkpoint is kicking up, making sure that knee's in line, and then tapping down. 3 more. Kick straight up, drag it around the bend, push back. Make sure you get that knee all the way in line with the hip, shoulder and hip, and not floating out to the side of it. It's easy to not quite make it back home again and miss that. Almost there. I believe this is rep number 5 for me. Peek back while you're doing this. Make sure your shin is parallel. It's easy again to feel like it is and then to look and be like, no, that's not it. So make sure you're getting external feedback cues. Okay. Other stretch that might feel good is this pigeon position. So you can cross over and twist, or you can cut into pigeon like I'm showing here, and then figure out a way to roll that wrist if you need it. Good work. These are not easy.